My name is Yvonne M. Wyland, and I am 31 years old. If I'm being honest, I should have seen it coming. My younger sister had always been the type to take and take until there was nothing left, but when it came to her wedding, I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd be different. Family is supposed to mean something, right? I was wrong. The second she got engaged, the circus started. Every call, every text was about what she needed. She needed help with the venue deposit. She needed help with rent because she couldn't focus on work and wedding planning at the same time. She needed a better car to impress her future in-laws. And every time, I said yes. Over the course of 8 months, I paid $21,500 toward her perfect day. Rent payments, a car, emergency vendor bills she swore she'd pay back once wedding gifts came in. I didn't question it. I told myself, that's what you do for family. That's what I had always done. I should have noticed the pattern changing when I stopped being included. No invitation to the engagement party, no text when she went dress shopping. I found out through Instagram stories like a distant acquaintance instead of her sister. Then 2 weeks before the wedding, she called me out of the blue. No small talk, no thank you. Just a casual, hey, we're cutting the guest list a little. Nothing personal, but you don't have to come. I laughed at first because I thought she was joking. I actually laughed until she repeated it, slower this time, like I was the one who didn't understand. I asked her why. She sighed and said, really, Yvonne, you're a cheap, selfish coward. You always have been. I can't have that kind of energy at my wedding. Cheap, after $21,500. Selfish, after co-signing half her life. A coward, because I didn't bend fast enough one time. I didn't argue, I didn't cry. I just hung up. And for the first time in my life, I let myself really think about every time she had humiliated me, used me, tossed me aside, then expected me to smile about it. I thought about how often I paid just to keep the peace, about how often I stayed quiet to avoid being called dramatic. That night, I opened my laptop and started planning. The night before her wedding, around 8 p.m., I sat down at my laptop and started pulling the strings, not in a dramatic, screaming way. In the same quiet, efficient way I'd handled every crisis she ever handed me. Except this time, I wasn't saving her. I was finally letting her feel what it costs when the person holding everything together stops pretending. First, I canceled the $3,000 rent payment that was due the next morning. It wasn't rent for the venue, it wasn't something glamorous. It was her real-life rent, the one she'd been temporarily leaning on me to cover while she focused on being a bride. Without that payment, her landlord would be on her by Monday, demanding the overdue balance, and she'd have to scramble the way she'd forced me to scramble for her over and over again. Then I logged into the insurance portal and removed her car from my policy. That car was still legally in my name. I had bought it because she said her old one was embarrassing, and she didn't want to show up to her future in-laws looking broke. I'd told myself it was temporary, that she'd refinance it once things settled. Things never settled. They just kept taking. I sent a quick message to the dealership and flagged it as a repossession. Clean, simple, paperwork-based. The kind of consequence you can't cry your way out of. Finally, I opened a blank document and drafted a formal bill for $21,500. Every payment, every emergency, every Venmo transfer, every wire. I didn't write a novel. I didn't pour my heart out. I wrote it like a professional because that's how she always treated me, like I was a resource. I attached the invoice and emailed it to her with one line that didn't even feel cruel anymore. Since I'm too cheap to party with you, I figured you'd want your money handled properly. I hit send and closed my laptop. It didn't take an hour. My phone lit up so hard it almost vibrated off the table. She called, then texted, then called again. When I didn't answer, she sent messages in rapid fire, the same cycle she always used when she wanted control back. Confusion first, then anger, then panic. What did you do? Why is my rent showing canceled? Why is my car not working? Why did I get an invoice? I didn't respond, so she showed up. She stood outside my apartment building screaming my name from the sidewalk like she was being attacked. Neighbors started peeking through blinds. Someone on an upstairs balcony yelled at her to shut up. She kept going anyway, shouting that I ruined her wedding, that I owed her, that I needed to fix it. The way she said fix it, like I was her personal maintenance crew, made something in my chest go cold. That's when my parents got involved. Around midnight, the calls started, not just from her. Mom, Dad, then her again, then Mom again. My phone lit up every 2 minutes like a threat. No voicemails, no explanations, just constant ringing meant to wear me down until I picked up and folded. I didn't. In the morning, they showed up in person. I heard them before I saw them. Her screaming voice echoing down the hallway, my mom crying, my dad barking orders like he was leading a battalion. When I opened the door, my dad pushed his way halfway into my space, yelling about how I had disgraced the family. My sister was red-faced and sobbing, spitting words about how I had ruined her life, embarrassed her in front of everyone, destroyed the best day she'd ever have. My mom went straight for guilt. She said I was tearing the family apart and begged me to fix it before it was too late. Fix it! Like I was the one who lied. Like I was the one who took $21,500 and still decided I wasn't worth an invitation. For once, I didn't match their volume. I spoke calmly, and that seemed to scare them more than yelling ever could. I told them I wasn't fixing anything. I told my sister she was getting exactly what she earned. I reminded her about the rent, the car, the invoice. I asked my parents directly if helping her had ever been enough. If there was ever a moment when she said thank you and meant it, then stopped asking for more. No one answered. My dad tried switching tactics. He said they would talk to her, they would handle her attitude, but I needed to reinstate the rent and return the car first, so we didn't make a scene. That's when I laughed, loudly, right in his face. I told him the scene was already made the moment she called me cheap and cowardly while taking my money. I told them to leave. I closed the door. I locked it. I shut the blinds. Then I sat down with a cup of coffee like it was any other Saturday, because for the first time, I wasn't the one being humiliated. I thought that would be the end of it. I underestimated how far she was willing to go when she couldn't control me. By noon, she took it to Facebook. A long, dramatic public post went up, written like a victim statement. She called me jealous, selfish, cruel. She said I sabotaged her wedding out of spite, left her homeless and stranded, and stole her car to punish her. She even posted a photo of herself standing in a parking lot next to packed boxes, tears streaking down her face, like she'd been evicted by some heartless stranger instead of facing consequences she earned. She didn't mention the $21,500. She didn't mention the rent I'd covered for months. She didn't mention the car still legally in my name. She didn't mention calling me cheap and cowardly 2 weeks before her wedding. According to her post, I was the villain in a fairy tale gone wrong. I didn't comment. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself in words. I posted receipts. Every bank transfer, every Venmo payment, every wire, every single dime I had given her over 8 months, clearly labeled, dated, and totaled. I added one caption and nothing else. Facts don't need feelings. It didn't take long. Friends from high school started chiming in. Old coworkers. Even some of her bridesmaids. People asked questions she couldn't answer. Some unfriended me immediately. Many more unfriended her. The tone shifted fast, from sympathy to confusion to quiet judgment. Then the vendors saw it. It turned out she had promised several of them that family was covering everything. After my post went up, they weren't so sure. The hairdresser demanded full payment up front or dropped out. The caterer canceled, after realizing the balance wasn't guaranteed. One of the groomsmen backed out entirely after his wife saw the posts and decided they weren't going to support someone who scammed her own sister. By late afternoon, the wedding was still technically happening, but it was bleeding out. My phone stayed silent because I left it that way. My parents tried again that evening. My mom texted first, finally dropping the fake politeness. She said I'd made my point and begged me not to do this to my sister. She said it had gone too far. 10 minutes later, my dad texted something colder. He said if I had any decency left, I'd fix what I broke. Neither of them mentioned the money. Neither of them offered to pay it back. In their minds, it was my responsibility to absorb the loss, save my sister's reputation, and swallow the insult like I always had. I didn't reply. I didn't even open the messages fully. I just watched the screen dim. The next morning, I woke up to nearly 80 unread messages. Extended family. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Uncles who barely remembered my birthday suddenly moralizing about loyalty and blood. According to the story she'd spun, I had stolen her future. I had cut off her payments out of cruelty. I had left her stranded on purpose. The family bought it. Facebook filled with passive-aggressive quotes. Family is supposed to lift each other up. Some people show their true colors when you need them most. No one tagged me, but it was obvious who they were aimed at. For about 5 minutes, I almost felt guilty. Then I remembered standing in her apartment months earlier, handing her the keys to the car she wanted so badly, and hearing her say, "You're not as useless as I thought." Like it was praise. That memory snapped me back into place. Instead of firing back emotionally, I did something worse. I stayed silent. I gathered everything: bank statements, wire confirmations, screenshots of texts where she asked for money and thanked me afterward. I sent one clean, cold email to every family member who had contacted me. Facts are not negotiable. $21,500. Car title attached. Rent receipts attached. If you still believe her, that's your choice. No anger, no explanation. Then I turned off my phone. The world outside my apartment was on fire. Her wedding was unraveling faster than anyone could stop it. The venue fell through. The DJ refused to show up without cash. The caterers demanded payment she didn't have. The wedding was moved to her fiancé's uncle's backyard. No flowers, no centerpieces, folding chairs on patchy grass, a Bluetooth speaker playing the wedding march from someone's phone. From what I heard later, people whispered the entire time, not about how beautiful she looked, but about what a disaster it all was. Meanwhile, I spent the day doing absolutely nothing. Leftover pizza, stupid TV, sleep. That night, an envelope appeared under my door, one sheet of paper in her handwriting. "You are dead to me. I hope you live to regret this." No apology, no ownership, just blame. I stared at it for a long time, feeling nothing but clarity. They had chosen their version of the story. And now so had I. But I didn't know yet that the worst move hadn't come from her. It was coming from our father. I thought after the wedding collapsed, after the public humiliation, after her note telling me I was dead to her, things would finally go quiet. I figured even she had to understand the damage was done. I underestimated how far our parents were willing to go to protect the image of a daughter who had never learned the meaning of accountability. 2 days after the wedding, my landlord called. She sounded uncomfortable, like she didn't quite know how to say what she was about to say. She told me my father had contacted her directly, not to complain, not to ask questions. He had tried to negotiate a buyout of my lease. He offered her money to terminate my contract early so I could move back home and work things out with the family. I sat there in silence for a second, not hurt, not shocked, just impressed. Yelling didn't work. Guilt didn't work. Public shaming didn't work. So now he was trying eviction by proxy. I thanked her for telling me and assured her I wasn't going anywhere. She told me she figured as much and wanted me to know she found the call inappropriate. When I hung up, I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so on brand it hurt. The next day, a certified letter arrived. Official letterhead. Legal language. It was from my father. He threatened to sue me for emotional distress if I didn't publicly apologize to my sister and withdraw the invoice. He even included a draft Facebook post he wanted me to copy and paste, admitting I had lied about helping her financially and expressing deep regret for my actions. They really thought they had me cornered. What they didn't know was that I had already collected my insurance policy. Every receipt, every email, every text message where she asked for money or thanked me after receiving it. Screenshots of her bragging to friends about how I footed most of the bill because I was too much of a sucker to say no. Everything was saved, time-stamped, backed up twice. I made one phone call. Not to a lawyer, not to anyone in the family. I called a friend from college who worked at a local news station. I didn't dump the whole story on her, just enough to pique her interest. A family wedding, imploding over money. A sister cut out after paying tens of thousands. Public receipts. Legal threats. She told me to send what I had. I did. 2 days later, an article went live. It didn't name names, but anyone who had been following the Facebook chaos knew exactly who it was about. It laid out the facts in a way my family never could. The money, the uninviting, the retaliation, the attempt to legally intimidate me into silence. The effect was immediate. The relatives who had been blowing up my phone went quiet. The threat of a lawsuit vanished. My father never called again. My sister deleted half her posts and locked down her profiles. The family war ended, not with reconciliation, but with exposure. I didn't block anyone. I didn't send a victory message. I just stopped. No birthdays, no holidays, no apologies, no explanations. I built a wall and didn't decorate it. For a while after the article, it was like my entire family disappeared. No texts, no calls, no passive-aggressive quotes. I expected to feel lonely. Instead, I felt light. I hadn't realized how heavy it was to carry people who only showed up when they needed something. Peace settled in. And then, 3 weeks later, someone knocked on my door. No screaming, no chaos, just a quiet knock. I opened it to find my cousin Tyler standing there with a six-pack in his hand like a peace offering. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. I stepped aside and let him in without a word. We sat on my couch, drank in silence, the TV playing reruns neither of us watched. Finally, he told me everything. How the marriage had already cracked. How her husband had discovered she'd lied to him about money too. How his family, obsessed with reputation, had turned cold when the truth came out. Within a week, he'd moved back in with his parents to think. He told me my father's reputation had taken a hit as well. Deals fell apart. Calls stopped being returned. In a town built on appearances, trying to legally threaten your own daughter wasn't a good look. Before Tyler left, he said one thing I hadn't realized I needed to hear. You're better off without her. We all are. When the door closed behind him, the silence returned. This time, it felt earned. I thought the chapter was finally closed. I was wrong. I hadn't thought about my sister, her husband, or my parents in weeks when the email came through. Life had finally gone quiet, the kind of quiet that settles after something has burned all the way down. I was back to work, back to routines, back to a version of myself that didn't feel like it was constantly bracing for impact. So when I saw the subject line, "We need to talk," I almost deleted it without opening it. It wasn't from my sister. It wasn't from my father. It was from her husband. Short, clipped, written like someone who didn't want to say more than necessary. He said my sister told him I owed her money and that some of it was his too. He said he expected an explanation, and if he didn't get one, they would take it to court. There it was again. That family reflex. Threat first, truth later. I didn't reply right away. I let it sit for 2 days. Let him wonder. Let him feel the uncertainty they had tried to bury me under for months. Then, when I was ready, I responded with one sentence. Everything is documented. I suggest you review the records before making false claims. I attached a zip file. Inside were PDFs of every payment, every receipt, every message where my sister acknowledged the money as a loan. Black and white. Unbreakable. I didn't add commentary. I didn't explain. I let the facts speak. Less than an hour later, he blocked me. 2 weeks after that, I heard through a friend back home that he had filed for divorce. Apparently, the money wasn't the only thing she lied about. When the sympathy dried up and the gifts ran out, so did his patience. He moved back in with his parents. She moved into our parents' condo, the same one they had to buy after selling the house at a loss. The perfect family everyone admired vanished almost overnight. And me, still in my same beat-up apartment, still driving the same car, still working the same job. No surprise bills, no screaming phone calls, no one demanding I fix what they broke. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't something you'd post online. But it was mine. Months passed. Seasons changed. Holidays came and went without a single message. No birthday reminders. No guilt-laced texts. For the first time in my life, my phone stayed quiet, and my heart felt lighter because of it. I hadn't realized how much space people like my sister take up even when they aren't in the room. One evening, maybe 6 months after everything fell apart, my phone rang with an unknown number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. It was my cousin Tyler. He asked if I wanted to get dinner sometime, just to catch up. I thought about the life I'd built in the quiet, about how safe it felt not carrying the weight of people who never deserved it. Then I thought about Tyler, the one person who knocked on my door when it would have been easier to stay silent. "Yeah," I said, "let's do it." We met at a dusty bar on the edge of town. Cheap wings, bad lighting, music too loud. It was perfect. We didn't talk about my sister or my parents or the wedding disaster. We talked about work, about stupid memories from when we were younger, about nothing important at all. Halfway through the second beer, Tyler grinned and said something that stuck with me. "You know you're the lucky one, right?" I raised an eyebrow. "You got out," he said. "Not many of us do." He was right. I lost $21,500. I lost the family I thought I had. I lost the future I believed I was building by being the one who always said yes. But in exchange, I gained something I'd never had before. Freedom. Real freedom. The kind that doesn't come with strings or guilt or an invoice hidden in someone else's pocket. The kind you earn by surviving and finally choosing yourself. I left that bar that night with an almost empty wallet and a full heart. As I walked under flickering streetlights toward my car, it hit me just how light I felt. No dread, no resentment, no waiting for the next favor or betrayal. Peace isn't free. Sometimes it costs your patience, sometimes your dignity, sometimes $21,500. But when you finally pay it, it's worth every single penny.